next up is the main event, which you've all been waiting for. Dr. Thomas, you have the floor, my brother.
I appreciate it. And the main event is not Mike Tyson. So we've got a whole different kind of conversation we're going to have today. And Jordan, you kind of let us down. Usually you have like a glass, and I kind of know what, Pinot, is it a Grigio? I mean, what are... You're on mute, my friend. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started into the conversation. So today, as you heard alluded to, we have Miss Masah SamForay, who is the president of the Southeast Rotary Club. And just a little context, several of us had an opportunity through the invitation of Rodney to join one of their club meetings, and she was explaining about a very personal experience of her family and in a project that she's connected to. And I'm going to give her an opportunity to speak to that. But I was blown away by her story, as well as just the camaraderie of the club and leaning into clearly an opportunity for us to be able to have a global impact, as you heard Jordan speaking to. So she's going to talk a little bit about that as the conversation today. And I also typically just kind of speak from my heart about our presenters, but this speaker that we have today, she is such an amazing woman that I actually have to read a few things because I don't want to miss it or leave some key things out. But as you know, she's an attorney. She owns her own practice, family law practice, and she serves on the Illinois State Bar Association of Governors. She is also the 2019 chair of the Racial and Ethnic Minorities in the Law Committee. She's an active member of the Family Law Section Council Attorney. She is the co-founder and past president of the Black Bar Association of Will County. And she previously served as on the board of directors for the Black Women's Lawyer Association of the Greater Chicago. And she's also active in the Cook County Bar Association, where she is the 2016 chair of the Family Law Committee, recognized as one of the National Black Lawyers Top 100 Attorneys, recognized in 2019 as one of the 40 under 40, appointed by the Illinois governor to the board of trustees of the Governor's State University, and I could go on and on and on. This is a dynamic woman who is clearly making an impact both in Illinois as well as now in Houston, and serving in both states, supporting families from a legal perspective. But the most important thing is, and I think probably her most important role, is she's also a mother of three, and being a mom, still doing all this phenomenal work out in the community and holding it down as mom too. More props to her, and I can't thank her enough for all of what you're doing, both in Illinois and Houston, as well as taking care of business at home. And I always have one fun fact for our presenters, and I will say that she is joining us from my home state, Minnesota, cold Minnesota today, hailing from Minneapolis. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Masah SamForay, our guest speaker today.
Oh my goodness. It's like I want to cringe, but I know I'm on Zoom, and so the camera's, on my face. It's so uncomfortable to hear people talk about you, but thank you so much for giving that bio and giving people a little bit of background about my classification. What's not in that bio, and what I probably should have shared, was my Rotary bio, because that's what I'm I shouldn't say what I'm most passionate about. I'm very, very passionate about the families that I help with, my law practice, but I am exceptionally passionate about childhood education and about the work that I'm doing with my nonprofit Villages Youth and Family Services, and in conjunction with the assistance of my father, who is the president of the board. So that is what I want to talk to you more so about today. I want to share with you the work that our organization is doing in Sierra Leone, West Africa. And I have a little video to share with you, just because, they say a picture says 1,000 words, and I don't know, maybe a video says 1,000,000. But before I get to the video and to give you a little bit more information about the specific project that we are very excited to be working on today, I want to give you a little bit of background about who I am, what drew me to Rotary, and a little bit of background about Sierra Leone generally. So, what I do for work. As a very young girl, before I ever had even dreams of going to law school, I read a book in the library. I distinctly remember, I remember the shelf that I pulled it off of. I remember the cover. I remember the smell of it. It was called Don't Hurt Lori. And I don't know why it was hidden in the books, in the libraries of an elementary school, but essentially what it was a very, at the time, it seemed gripping and graphic book about child abuse. In reality, it was a fictional story about a little girl called Lori, whose mother was physically abusive to her. And it shocked me. First of all, to read a book like that, it just really, I already had a love for reading, but to know that there were books that had all of this really salacious information in there where I could read about the lives of other people who were very different than mine, it really shaped a love for reading for me. But it also opened up my eyes to the fact that the sort of insulated little bubble that I had that really kind of gifted, I guess, sort of childhood that my parents had taken care to to sort of curate for my sisters and I, was very different than the lives that many other children were living. And when I read this book, I was in the 3rd grade, and I had not yet been to Sierra Leone, where my parents were born and raised. I did not go to Sierra Leone until the 4th grade. And so, the going to Sierra Leone at 9 years old for the first time, and then I eventually went back again when my parents sent us there in the early 90s for us to get to know our culture, get to know our family, get to know, our language, and, just connect with our roots. Not knowing when they sent us there that a civil war had already sort of broken out, in different regions of the country. And so we were only there for a year and a half when the American embassy and, sends out the notifications to everybody that we are leaving. If you are coming with us, let's go. Otherwise, we're not coming back to get you, because a civil war that lasted for over, 10 years in Sierra Leone and Liberia actually broke out early in the 90s. And so going to Sierra Leone, to a country where education is not mandatory, education is not free, where 47% of the population is illiterate. They cannot read, they cannot write. And of course, for women, the statistics are even more shocking. In a country where maternal mortality rates are the highest in the entire world, and the infant mortality rate is the highest in the entire world. Every country in the world, if you give birth to a child, you have a much higher likelihood of walking out of the hospital with your baby. But in Sierra Leone, our infant mortality rates and maternity mortality rates are the highest in the world. It's a country where, in 2017, National Geographic dubbed us the worst country in the world to be born a girl, because of high rates of illiteracy, because of childhood marriages, because of FGM, and because of many other issues that affect young girls and women in Sierra Leone. And so I distinctly remember that book, and I bring it up because it was my first indication that the life that I led, going to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, actually twice on Sundays and Wednesdays, and any other time my parents wanted us to go to church, and beauty pageants and tennis lessons and piano and violin, that was not the life that every other parent was able to afford for their children, or was interested in affording for their children. And then going to Sierra Leone and seeing firsthand poverty and what it looks like and what it smells like, and what it means for the trajectory of the life of the children that I would see every single day, on the way to school, selling and hustling in the streets because they didn't have an education. That really then shaped the rest of my life. And so sort of that interest in childhood education, literacy, child protection, domestic violence, child abuse, all of that, is my passion. So I want to share with you a video about my father's passion. And my father is Reverend Alfred SamForay. He's a minister, but most importantly, his classification, because he is also a Rotarian of the Bow Club in Sierra Leone, having retired to Sierra Leone after being in the United States for over 40 years, working as an agricultural and industrial engineer. His passion is tractors and farming, large scale farming. And so when he returned to Sierra Leone after retiring about 4 years ago, he started farming and he started doing rice. And the purpose of the farming,
My name is Reverend Alfred SamForay with Villages Youth and Family Services Organization, a non-profit. We are trying to help the community help themselves. There are two ways to help people in need. One is, if they're hungry, you feed them, and the next day you give them food again, and the next day you give them more food. Another way is to teach them how to get their own food. Give a man a fish and you feed him for the day. Teach them how to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. At present, farming in Sierra Leone is done basically by hand, meaning using a hoe, a machete, or an axe to brush, to plow, and to plant seed. My area of specialization being agricultural mechanization gives me a broad view of how farm machinery can be used even in a developing country to help people produce more food. And that's what we're trying to do here in Sierra Leone so that they can feed themselves, their families, and their children and grandchildren to come.
I am Mohamed C. Kamara, Acting Principal, Benevolent Junior Secondary School, Moemba Junction. Children are struggling because they don't have money to go and buy food to eat. So if we say we try to do this farming system, we can provide food for the children in school during lunchtime.
Agriculture is very essential to health sector. They will come in and help us because they are going to use that money from the farm, which I said they produce, at least to support the health facility.
So the goal of this whole thing is not so much farming, but it is to produce employment, produce food for the community, and help develop and provide for their children, their wives, their sisters. We're not trying to save the whole world. We're trying to save this village and the next village and another village. And after all, somebody else can continue to do what we are doing, and your gift can continue to give, like they say, as a gift that keeps on giving. So all we want you to do is help us and be part of what we're doing.
That's my daddy. You know, as I said, he's holding things down in Sierra Leone, very active and very busy with the agricultural projects we have there. And so I don't know if you noticed, Jordan, when you were speaking, you know, I was just grinning really big, like, oh, agriculture, like husbandry and, you know, rather animal husbandry and solar irrigation systems. That is really awesome that you guys are already doing that work in Haiti. And then the other thing that you mentioned, I heard you say that you were going to be working in Ghana. I just got back from Ghana. I think I was there, Rodney, the last time, maybe when we were on the phone. I don't know if I was in Ghana or in Sierra Leone, but I was in Ghana in October. Amazing country with so much potential and has had so much growth in their infrastructure and economy in the last couple of decades, but there certainly is a lot of work to be done. And so I thank you guys for in allowing me to come and to talk to you about yet another country that could use your help. And so the project that we're working on, as you can see, we have a bunch of different things that we do with villages. My dad, the engineer, is very interested in, you know, sustainable farming, right? Lifting communities out of poverty by, you know, showing them how to farm in a more sustainable way. And you also heard mention about the healthcare portion of what we do. My mother, after having been a registered nurse for, you know, over 30 years, also retired a few years ago. Because of the war, which was then followed not too long after by the Ebola crisis that we had in 2013 and 2014, Sierra Leone's already struggling healthcare system was almost decimated. 10% of the doctors and nurses were killed during the Ebola crisis because of the rate of, you know, how easy it is to contract and spread that terrible disease. And so my parents and my family, you know, through the nonprofit that we've had, they have sent over 32 nurses to nursing school. And all of those nurses are working to this day in Sierra Leone. But I'm not a nurse and I'm not an agricultural engineer and I don't know anything about any of that. So I like to stay in my own lane. What I am working on and what is a hallmark of my year as president of the Rotary Club of Chicago Southeast is literacy. And so we are building a library, and we are building a library in the village where my father went to school. It's Bumpe High School, and I had the opportunity to visit there for the first time. I've heard about it my entire life because my father credits it, you know, for being the catalyst that, you know, gave him the educational background that he needed to be able to go, you know, get an international scholarship to University of Illinois and end up becoming an engineer from there. But I had never been to Bumpe until I went a few months ago in November. And it was a beautiful, beautiful campus. But what they have, you know, as a library is just woefully insufficient. There is nothing about the library and those old, dusty, used textbooks, you know, from the US and from the UK that don't look like any child has touched them in years. Nothing about that library would inspire reading or literacy. And the children who are at that high school. And so our Rotary Club is committed to building a library and to, you know, what is going to be a 3-year global grant project that will end and culminate with vocational training, not only for librarian staff, because we have a prolific librarian in our Rotary Club who is committed to doing that along with members of the National Black Librarians Association, but also with vocational training for the teachers in the school. And so this first phase, or what we call phase 1 of our 3-year project, is not a global grant. This first one is a grant that is being, or I should say it's a project rather, that is being sponsored and funded by individual Rotary clubs all over. And so right now we have sponsorship from 4 Rotary clubs, and we have nearly reached our initial goal. Our initial goal was $10,000 for us to, you know, ship books, age-appropriate books through a nonprofit called Books for Africa, and to build out a library, the library that was already in existence, and then to beautify the area, paint it, and, you know, and that sort of thing. So we were going to do all of that for $10,000. But when I got to Bumpe and I looked at the structures and I looked at the option, I don't think it's sufficient or appropriate. There's no sense in us going there to build yet another structure, to have yet another library that won't be properly managed and that won't inspire a love for reading for these children. And so now we have the lofty goal of wanting to build a library from ground up. And the good news about Sierra Leone and working in a country where the average person lives off of $1 a day is that it is relatively inexpensive to get anything done there if you know the right people. And thankfully, I know the right people. And so we just, fresh off the press, as of last week, got an architectural design from a local architect. And he has given us a design that our contractor said that we can build for $7,000. So the entire project, from books to building, bricks, mortar, painting, beautification, all of that, we're going to be able to do all of that for $17,000 and change lives. In Sierra Leone, the average household, or I should say less than 1% of households has any reading materials whatsoever. And so that explains the astronomical illiteracy rates that we have in the country. But in this library, I'm so excited, that the structure is beautiful, and it's going to be what we hope is the hub for the village and for neighboring villages, so that the children are welcome and they feel free to go there to relax, to grab a book, to eventually get on the computers that we're going to have in a computer lab, which will be down the road, and to really get to know about the world around them, about the world outside of this village. So that's what I'm particularly interested in. And that's what, Rodney and, as a few of your other members have already heard me speak about. I'm very excited about this library project. So the library project was going to happen. We were going to do a ribbon cutting in December of 2020, but then COVID happened. And so now we will be traveling there with a team of Rotarians and other interested members, so that we can do the ribbon cutting and officially open in December of 2021. So I'm very excited. When I think about my cousins back home, and when I think about there, but for the grace of God go I, and what is it really that separates me and changed my trajectory and the future for my children versus the future that, or the reality that my cousins, are living in. The only difference is that my parents took education very, very seriously, and they had the opportunity, to be educated. And then from there, they had the opportunity to come to this great country and further their educations. And now, of course, full circle, they've gone back home to share, their time and their talents. And as somebody who is just one generation removed from abject poverty, I mean, sort of unimaginable poverty. And, the other thing is, I always when I think about Haiti, because we talk about Haiti a lot in the Western world, because it is the poorest country in the Western hemisphere, and I think about Haiti, and then I think about, the poorest countries, because Sierra Leone up until recently was the poorest country in the entire world. Western hemisphere, that's America and Canada and Latin America. The rest of the world, we're struggling. So to be the poorest country in the rest of the world is quite a shocking amount of poverty. And so I'm excited that for such a small amount of money, for such little effort, just a team of committed Rotarians and interested people giving up 10 days of their time to go there, to build the structure, paint it, beautify it, put some books in there, and, come back, a year from now, maybe with another 1 week commitment or 2 week commitment to do vocational training. I'm just excited about the lives that it will change, because it surely will change lives. As far as I'm concerned, my dad doesn't like to hear me say this, you can make it pretty far without calculus. Like, you can make it pretty far without knowing, applied chemistry. I didn't get very far, I did the bare minimum to graduate with my degrees, but without literacy, without the ability to read and to write effectively, and in this day and age, without computer literacy, your outlook on life and your ability to accomplish is just it's absolutely, sort of stymied. So I'm excited about this, and I hope you guys are excited too. And that concludes my presentation. But I would love to take any questions that you guys have about the project or about what we have done in the past, and maybe even about how you guys can get involved if that's something that you're interested in.
Thank you so much, Madam President. That was excellent. I appreciate it. You know, I've heard it, but I'm glad that the rest of my group got to hear your phenomenal story, your journey through Rotary, and the amazing work that you're doing internationally. My fellow